What if the moment just before you make a decision is when your mind actually reaches into the quantum realm and selects which reality will unfold? Scientists at Wellesley College have discovered that when consciousness interacts with the brain's microtubulus, it takes significantly longer for anesthesia to work, suggesting our awareness operates at the quantum level. But here's what will blow your mind. Recent experiments show that the observer effect in quantum mechanics might not just require measurement devices, but could be influenced by the observer's state of consciousness itself. Tonight, we're exploring how your thoughts might be quantum events, shaping reality in ways that challenge everything we thought we knew about the separation between mind and matter. Chapter 1: The Millisecond Revolution. When consciousness meets quantum time. In 1983, neuroscientist Benjamin Libet made a discovery that would shake the foundations of everything we believed about free will and consciousness. He was studying something called the readiness potential, a tiny electrical signal that fires in the brain just before people make a decision. What he found was impossible to ignore and deeply unsettling. When volunteers were asked to make a simple choice, like pressing a button with their left hand or right hand, their brains showed activity 500 milliseconds before they consciously decided what to do. 500 milliseconds might sound like nothing, but in the quantum world, it's an eternity. Think about what this means. Your subconscious mind, operating in some deeper layer of reality, had already committed to an action before your conscious thoughts even knew a decision was being made. It's as if there's a hidden part of you that lives slightly ahead in time, making choices and then informing your conscious mind what those choices were. But here's where Libet's discovery becomes truly mind-bending when we connect it to quantum mechanics. If your brain fires early for something as simple as pressing a button, what happens during the big moments? What about the instant you meet someone who will transform your life, or the split second you choose a path that alters your entire destiny? What if that 500 millisecond window isn't just neural activity, but your consciousness actually reaching into the quantum field to select which timeline becomes real? This isn't science fiction. This is where neuroscience meets quantum physics in ways that suggest reality itself might be far stranger than we ever imagined. Recent groundbreaking research at Wellesley College has provided stunning evidence that consciousness operates at the quantum level. Professor Mike Wiest and his team discovered something extraordinary when they studied how anesthesia affects the brain. They found that when rats were given a drug that binds specifically to microtubules, tiny structures inside neurons, it took significantly longer for anesthetic gases to make them unconscious. Think about what this means. Microtubules are microscopic hollow tubes found in every neuron in your brain. They're so small that quantum effects can actually occur within them, even in the warm, wet environment of living tissue. The fact that interfering with these structures delays unconsciousness suggests that consciousness itself might emerge from quantum processes happening inside these molecular machines. This discovery supports a radical theory that's been gaining momentum in the scientific community. It's called orchestrated objective reduction, and it was proposed by mathematician Roger Penrose and anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff. They suggested that consciousness arises from quantum computations occurring within the microtubules of neurons. Most scientists dismissed this idea when it was first proposed because quantum effects typically only survive in extremely cold, isolated environments. But biological systems keep surprising us with their ability to maintain quantum coherence in ways we never thought possible. We've seen this in photosynthesis, where plants use quantum superposition to navigate energy through multiple pathways simultaneously, finding the most efficient route to convert sunlight into chemical energy. We've discovered it in bird navigation, where quantum entanglement in specialized proteins allows birds to literally see magnetic fields as patterns of light. If evolution has learned to harness quantum mechanics for these biological processes, why not for consciousness itself? The implications become even more staggering when we consider the timing involved. That 500 millisecond window that Libet discovered isn't just a neural delay. It might be the moment when consciousness, operating at the quantum level, samples all possible futures and selects one to become real. In quantum mechanics, particles exist in superposition, simultaneously holding multiple states, until the moment of observation collapses them into a single reality. What if consciousness works the same way? Picture this. Every decision point in your life creates a branching of possibilities. In the quantum realm, all these possibilities exist simultaneously until the moment your consciousness observes them. But your subconscious mind, operating through quantum processes in your microtubules, might be making that observation 500 milliseconds before your thinking mind catches up. It's sampling possible futures, feeling into different timelines, and selecting the one that matches your deepest energetic frequency. This is why mystics throughout history have said that choices are made in the heart before the mind understands. They intuited something that quantum physics is now beginning to confirm. Reality isn't fixed and predetermined. It's fluid, responsive, and intimately connected to consciousness in ways that make the observer and the observed inseparable aspects of the same fundamental process. Recent experiments with the xenon gas, a substance commonly used in anesthesia, have provided even more evidence for this quantum connection. Researchers discovered that different isotopes of xenon, which are chemically identical but have different quantum properties called nuclear spin, produce different anesthetic effects. The only difference between these isotopes is a quantum property, yet somehow this influences consciousness. This suggests that awareness itself is sensitive to quantum mechanical effects in ways we're just beginning to understand. But perhaps the most fascinating aspect of this research is what it reveals about the nature of time and decision-making. If consciousness operates in that pre-selection window, it means you're not actually making decisions in the present moment. You're making them in a quantum realm that exists slightly outside of normal time, where possibilities are still fluid and multiple futures remain open. This fundamentally changes how we think about manifestation, free will, and the power of conscious intention. Most people try to change their lives by focusing on their thinking minds, setting goals and pushing toward outcomes. But if consciousness really works at the quantum level, operating in that 500 millisecond window before thought, then real change happens in a much more subtle realm. It happens in the space between stimulus and response, in the gap between possibility and actuality, in the quantum field where your deepest patterns and frequencies are constantly selecting which version of reality becomes your experience. The question isn't whether you have free will. The question is whether you're conscious enough to participate in the quantum selection process that's already happening beneath the surface of your awareness. As we dive deeper into this quantum mystery, we'll explore how ancient wisdom traditions somehow knew about these pre-selection moments, how modern technology is allowing us to measure consciousness at the quantum level, and most importantly, how you can learn to work with these quantum processes to consciously participate in creating the reality you experience. We're standing at the threshold of a new understanding where mind and matter, consciousness and cosmos reveal themselves as different aspects of the same quantum dance. The universe isn't just stranger than we imagine. It might be stranger than we can imagine. And consciousness, your consciousness, might be the key that unlocks the deepest mysteries of how reality actually works. Chapter 2. The Quantum Observer. How consciousness shapes reality at the microscopic level. Imagine walking into a laboratory where scientists are trying to answer one of the most profound questions in existence. Does consciousness create reality? Or does reality create consciousness? In quantum mechanics labs around the world, researchers are discovering that the act of observation doesn't just reveal what's already there. It actually determines what becomes real in the first place. But here's where it gets truly mind-bending. New evidence suggests that the consciousness of the observer, not just the measurement device, might be what shapes quantum reality. This takes us into the heart of what physicists call the observer effect. When particles exist at the quantum level, They don't behave like tiny balls bouncing around in space. Instead, they exist in what's called superposition, simultaneously holding multiple states until the moment someone or something observes them. It's as if the universe keeps its options open until consciousness arrives to make a selection. The most famous demonstration of this is the double-slit experiment, first performed by Thomas Young in 1803. When scientists fire individual particles of light through two narrow slits, something impossible happens. Each particle somehow goes through both slits at the same time, creating an interference pattern that can only be explained if the particle exists in multiple states simultaneously. But the moment you try to observe which slit the particle actually goes through, the interference pattern disappears. The act of observation forces the particle to choose a single path. For over a century, physicists assumed this was simply because any measurement device necessarily disturbs the system being observed. When you shine light on something to see it, you're bouncing photons off it, which changes its behavior. This seemed like a reasonable explanation until researchers started conducting more sophisticated experiments that revealed something far stranger. Eugene Wigner, a Nobel Prize-winning physicist, proposed one of the most radical interpretations of quantum mechanics in 1961. He suggested that consciousness itself might be what causes the wave function to collapse from multiple possibilities into a single reality. In what became known as Wigner's friend thought experiment, he imagined a scenario where a conscious observer inside a sealed laboratory performs a quantum measurement while another conscious observer outside remains unaware of the result. According to standard quantum mechanics, from the perspective of the outside observer, the entire laboratory, including the friend inside, should exist in superposition until the moment the outside observer opens the lab and checks the result. This leads to an impossible situation where conscious beings would exist in multiple states, simultaneously until observed by another conscious being. Wigner concluded that consciousness must play a fundamental role in determining which reality becomes actual. Most physicists found this interpretation uncomfortable because it seemed to give consciousness a privileged position in physics. But recent experiments are providing evidence that consciousness might indeed influence quantum systems in ways that go beyond simple measurement disturbance. Researchers at Google Quantum AI, led by physicist and computational neuroscientist Hartmut Neven, are now designing experiments to test whether human consciousness can be entangled with quantum computers. The idea sounds like science fiction, but the scientific rationale is solid. If consciousness operates through quantum processes in the brain, as the microtubule research suggests, then it should be possible to create quantum entanglement between human brains and artificial quantum systems. Neven and his team are exploring whether conscious observation by humans produces different results than automated measurements by machines. Early experiments using nuclear magnetic resonance to probe quantum states in brain tissue are showing promising results. When researchers examine the quantum properties of water molecules and other substances in living neural tissue, they find coherence patterns that shouldn't exist according to classical physics. The warm, noisy environment of the brain should destroy quantum effects almost instantly. Yet somehow, these delicate quantum states persist for much longer than predicted. This persistence of quantum coherence in biological systems has revolutionized our understanding of how consciousness might work. Christoph Koch, a leading consciousness researcher at the Allen Institute, has proposed experiments that would directly test whether consciousness can influence quantum measurements. In one proposed study, human volunteers would be connected to quantum processors through brain-computer interfaces, allowing researchers to monitor whether the observer's mental state affects quantum outcomes. But perhaps the most intriguing evidence comes from a theory called the N-frame model, developed by cognitive psychologist Darren Edwards. This model suggests that consciousness doesn't just passively observe quantum systems. Instead, it actively shapes how superposition states collapse based on the observer's expectations, beliefs, and mental state. According to this theory, your state of consciousness at the moment of observation influences which possibility becomes real. Think about what this means for your daily life. If consciousness really does shape quantum reality, then every moment of awareness is an act of creation. Your thoughts, emotions, and beliefs aren't just internal experiences, they're quantum events that ripple out into the fabric of reality, influencing how possibilities collapse into actual experiences. This interpretation finds support in some of the strangest experiments in physics. In delayed choice quantum eraser experiments, researchers can actually change the past behavior of particles by making measurements in the present. When they decide whether or not to observe which path a particle took, they retroactively determine whether the particle behaved like a wave or a particle, even if that decision is made after the particle has already been detected. These experiments suggest that consciousness and observation might exist partially outside of normal time, operating in a realm where past, present, and future are fluid and interconnected. This begins to explain why some people report precognitive experiences, or why meditation practices often involve accessing states of awareness that seem to transcend ordinary temporal boundaries. The quantum nature of consciousness also provides a potential solution to what neuroscientists call the binding problem. Your conscious experience feels unified and coherent, but your brain processes information through billions of separate neurons distributed across different regions. How does this distributed processing create a single, integrated experience of consciousness? Classical neuroscience has struggled to explain this unity. Information processing alone can't account for why billions of separate neural events feel like one continuous stream of awareness. But quantum entanglement naturally solves this problem. If consciousness arises from quantum processes in microtubules throughout the brain, then quantum entanglement could synchronize these processes instantaneously, creating the unified field of awareness you experience as consciousness. Recent research on quantum entanglement in biological systems has shown that this isn't just theoretical speculation. Scientists have discovered quantum correlations in enzyme reactions, DNA repair mechanisms, and even in the way birds navigate using Earth's magnetic field. If evolution has learned to use quantum entanglement for these biological functions, it's entirely plausible that consciousness operates through similar quantum mechanisms. This quantum model of consciousness also explains some of the most puzzling aspects of human experience. Have you ever had the feeling that someone was watching you and turned around to find them staring? Or felt an inexplicable connection with another person that seemed to transcend normal communication? These experiences might reflect genuine quantum entanglement between conscious beings. Studies of identical twins have found correlations in their brain activity even when they're separated by large distances and have no means of communication. While this research is still in its early stages, it suggests that consciousness might operate through non-local quantum connections that aren't limited by physical separation. The implications become even more profound when we consider how this quantum nature of consciousness might relate to what mystics and spiritual traditions have taught for thousands of years. The idea that all consciousness is interconnected, that individual awareness is part of a larger cosmic consciousness, begins to make sense from a quantum perspective. If consciousness operates through quantum entanglement and non-local correlations, then the boundaries between individual minds might be more fluid than we imagine. Your awareness might extend far beyond the physical boundaries of your brain, connecting you to a vast network of consciousness that includes other people, other forms of life, and perhaps even the universe itself. This doesn't mean that individual consciousness disappears into some kind of cosmic soup. Instead, it suggests that individual awareness might be like a wave on the ocean of universal consciousness. Each wave is distinct and unique, but it's also inseparably connected to the ocean from which it arises. As we explore these possibilities, we're not just studying abstract physics or philosophy. We're investigating the fundamental nature of our own existence and the role consciousness plays in shaping the reality we experience. The evidence suggests that you're not a passive observer of a predetermined universe. You're an active participant in an ongoing quantum creation where consciousness and cosmos dance together in every moment of awareness. The observer effect isn't just something that happens in distant laboratories with exotic particles. It's happening right now in your brain as your consciousness interacts with the quantum field that underlies all of reality. Every thought, every observation, every moment of awareness is a quantum event that participates in the continuous creation of the world you experience. This understanding opens up possibilities that most people have never considered. If consciousness really does shape quantum reality at the most fundamental level, then developing greater awareness, clarity, and intentionality isn't just personal development. It's a way of consciously participating in the ongoing creation of reality itself. Chapter 3: Microtubules as quantum computers, the architecture of consciousness. Deep inside every neuron in your brain, there exists a microscopic structure so small that quantum effects can actually occur within it, even in the warm, wet environment of living tissue. These structures are called microtubules, and they might be the most sophisticated quantum computers in the known universe. What makes this discovery truly extraordinary is that these biological quantum computers could be the actual source of human consciousness, processing information in ways that make our most advanced artificial computers look like pocket calculators. Microtubules are hollow cylindrical structures made of proteins called tubulins. They're incredibly tiny, measuring only about 25 nanometers in diameter. To put this in perspective, if a microtubule were the width of a human hair, then a human hair would be about 3,000 times wider. At this microscopic scale, the strange laws of quantum mechanics begin to take effect, allowing particles to exist in multiple states simultaneously and enabling instantaneous connections across space. Each microtubule is constructed from thousands of tubulin proteins arranged in a precise geometric pattern. These proteins can exist in different conformational states, essentially acting like biological switches that can be on or off. But here's where it gets quantum. According to the orchestrated objective reduction theory proposed by Roger Penrose and Stuart Hameroff, these tubulin proteins can exist in quantum superposition, simultaneously holding multiple states until the moment of conscious observation collapses them into a definite configuration. What makes this theory so compelling is the architecture of microtubules themselves. They're not just random biological structures, they're organized in fractal patterns that repeat at different scales, creating what mathematicians call self-similar geometry. Fractals are structures that look the same whether you zoom in or zoom out, like the branching patterns of trees, the coastlines of continents, or the networks of blood vessels in your body. This fractal organization is crucial for quantum computation because it allows information to be processed across multiple scales simultaneously. A single quantum event at the molecular level can cascade through the fractal structure, influencing larger networks of microtubules throughout the neuron and potentially across entire brain regions. It's as if your brain contains billions of interconnected quantum computers, all running calculations simultaneously. Recent experiments have provided stunning evidence that these quantum processes really do occur in microtubules. At the University of Alberta, researcher Jack Tuzinski discovered something called delayed luminescence in microtubules. When microtubules are exposed to light, they absorb photons and then re-emit them later in a process that appears to have quantum origins. Even more remarkably, when anesthetic drugs are applied to these microtubules, the delayed luminescence process speeds up dramatically. This discovery is revolutionary because it directly connects anesthesia, consciousness, and quantum mechanics. We know that anesthetics eliminate consciousness by interfering with microtubules in neurons. The fact that they also affect quantum processes in these same structures suggests that consciousness itself emerges from quantum computations occurring within microtubular networks. At Princeton University, researchers Gregory Scholes and Arat Kalra took this investigation even further. They used precise laser pulses to excite tubulin proteins and found that the excitation energy spreads through microtubules much farther than classical physics would predict. The energy behaves as if it's moving through a quantum system where normal rules of locality don't apply. But when anesthetics are applied, this quantum behavior disappears and the energy behaves classically. These experiments provide direct evidence that microtubules can maintain quantum coherence, even in the noisy, warm environment of living cells. This was previously thought to be impossible because quantum effects are extremely fragile and typically require temperatures close to absolute zero to survive. The fact that biological systems have evolved mechanisms to protect and utilize quantum coherence suggests that these effects are not just possible, but essential for consciousness. The fractal structure of microtubules might be the key to understanding how quantum coherence persists in biological systems. In classical physics, increasing temperature and noise destroy quantum effects by causing decoherence. But in fractal systems, quantum information can be protected through a process called error correction, where information is distributed across multiple scales and pathways, making it resistant to local disturbances. Think of it like a hologram. If you break a holographic plate into pieces, each piece still contains the entire image, just at lower resolution. Similarly, quantum information in fractal microtubular networks might be distributed in such a way that local disruptions don't destroy the overall pattern. This could explain how consciousness maintains its coherent, unified nature despite the constant molecular chaos occurring in your brain. Laboratory experiments with artificial quantum fractals have confirmed that these structures can indeed protect quantum information from environmental noise. Researchers at Utrecht University used scanning tunneling microscopes to arrange electrons in fractal patterns called Sierpinski triangles. When they measured the quantum properties of these electron patterns, they found that the quantum states lived in fractional dimensions, just as the mathematics of fractal geometry predicts. This experimental confirmation of quantum fractals in laboratory settings makes the existence of similar structures in biological systems much more plausible. If scientists can create quantum fractals with simple electron arrangements, evolution has had billions of years to develop far more sophisticated quantum architectures in living cells. The implications for consciousness are staggering. If your brain really does contain billions of quantum computers organized in fractal networks, then consciousness might involve information processing capabilities that far exceed anything we can currently imagine. These biological quantum computers could be performing calculations that involve exploring multiple possibilities simultaneously, accessing information from parallel quantum processors, and integrating data across scales from molecular to macroscopic. This quantum computational model also explains some of the most mysterious aspects of consciousness, such as creativity, intuition, and insight. When you have a sudden flash of understanding or a creative breakthrough, it might be the result of quantum computations in your microtubules exploring vast possibility spaces and finding novel connections between ideas. The quantum nature of microtubular consciousness also provides a potential explanation for altered states of awareness. Meditation, psychedelic experiences, and other consciousness expanding practices might work by changing the quantum coherence patterns in microtubular networks. Different states of consciousness could correspond to different quantum computational modes, each accessing different aspects of reality or different levels of information processing. Recent research on anesthesia has provided additional evidence for this quantum model. Scientists have discovered that different anesthetic drugs affect consciousness through different mechanisms, but they all seem to interfere with quantum processes in microtubules. Some anesthetics bind directly to tubulin proteins, others affect the electromagnetic fields around microtubules, and still others influence the quantum coherence times of these structures. The fact that consciousness can be eliminated by disrupting quantum processes in microtubules strongly suggests that these quantum effects are not just correlated with consciousness, but are actually necessary for it. This is similar to how damaging specific brain regions can eliminate specific cognitive functions, providing evidence that those brain regions are necessary for those functions. But perhaps the most exciting aspect of this research is what it suggests about the future of consciousness. If consciousness really does operate through quantum computation in microtubules, then it might be possible to enhance these quantum processes through various interventions. Techniques that increase quantum coherence in neural tissue could potentially expand consciousness in ways we can barely imagine. Some researchers are already exploring whether electromagnetic fields, specific frequencies of light, or even certain chemical compounds might enhance quantum coherence in microtubules. Others are investigating whether meditation and other consciousness practices might naturally optimize these quantum processes through mechanisms we don't yet understand. The discovery that consciousness might arise from quantum computation in microtubules also raises profound questions about the nature of identity and the boundaries of individual awareness. If consciousness emerges from quantum processes that can become entangled across space and time, then the traditional view of consciousness as something confined within individual brains might be incomplete. Your microtubular quantum computers might be connected to vast networks of consciousness that extend far beyond your physical brain. This could explain phenomena like collective intelligence, morphic resonance, and the feeling of connection that people sometimes experience during profound spiritual or mystical states. As we continue to unravel the quantum mysteries of microtubular consciousness, we're not just learning about brain function. We're discovering fundamental principles about how consciousness and cosmos interconnect at the deepest levels of reality. These tiny biological quantum computers might be the bridge between mind and matter, the interface where consciousness touches the quantum field that underlies all of existence. The architecture of consciousness, built from fractal networks of quantum computers smaller than anything we can see, might be the most sophisticated information processing system in the universe. And it's operating right now in your brain, generating the miracle of awareness that allows you to contemplate these very ideas. Chapter 4. The Pre-Selection Window, Catching Thoughts. Before they become reality. There's a moment so brief you almost never notice it. Yet it's the most important 500 milliseconds of your entire existence. In this tiny window of time, your future is being selected from infinite possibilities by processes operating below the threshold of conscious awareness. But here's what will change everything. You can learn to catch this moment, to step into that quantum selection process, and consciously participate in choosing which reality becomes your experience. This pre-selection window exists in the gap between quantum possibility and physical actuality. Remember Benjamin Libet's discovery that brain activity begins 500 milliseconds before conscious decision-making. That's not just a neural delay. It's evidence that consciousness operates in a realm where time moves differently, where your awareness can sample potential futures before they solidify into the timeline you'll actually experience. Think of it like standing at the edge of a vast branching river. In the quantum realm, all possible streams of reality flow simultaneously. Your consciousness, operating through microtubular quantum computers, sends out tendrils of awareness into these different streams, feeling into various futures, sensing which possibilities resonate with your deepest patterns and frequencies. Then, in that crucial 500 millisecond window, one stream is selected and the others fade away. Most people live their entire lives completely unconscious of this selection process. They only wake up to a decision after it's already been made, finding themselves on a particular timeline without any memory of choosing it. It's like waking up on a moving train with no recollection of buying a ticket or selecting a destination. You're already committed to wherever that train is going, and you can only watch the scenery pass by. But here's the revolutionary discovery. You can learn to catch yourself in that pre-selection moment. You can develop the sensitivity to feel when quantum possibilities are still fluid before they collapse into fixed reality. It requires a completely different kind of attention than most people are familiar with. Instead of focusing on thoughts and external events, you learn to tune into the subtle movements of consciousness itself. The key lies in understanding how your brain's predictive coding system works. Your subconscious mind is constantly running simulations of possible futures, drawing from past experiences and emotional patterns to predict what's likely to happen next. This predictive system operates much faster than conscious thought, making thousands of micro predictions every second based on subtle environmental cues and internal body states. Here's where it gets fascinating. These predictive processes aren't just mental activities. They're quantum events occurring in your microtubular networks, where consciousness interfaces directly with the quantum field. When your brain predicts a particular outcome, it's actually sampling that possibility at the quantum level, measuring its probability and coherence with your current energetic state. This is why so many people struggle with manifestation and positive thinking techniques. They're trying to override the pre-selection process with conscious effort, but the quantum selection has already happened 500 milliseconds earlier. It's like trying to steer a car that's already crashed. The moment of choice has passed, and you're already locked into experiencing the consequences of decisions you never consciously made. The solution isn't to think harder or visualize more intensely. It's to develop what ancient traditions called witnessing consciousness, the ability to observe your own awareness in real time. This involves training yourself to notice the subtle signs that appear in the pre-selection window, the tiny shift in your body's tension, the fleeting image that flashes through your mind, the barely perceptible feeling of expansion or contraction that occurs before conscious thought. Neuroscientist Joe Dispenza describes this as catching the program before it runs. Your subconscious is essentially a vast library of recorded experiences, and it's constantly selecting which recording to play based on current circumstances. But in that brief moment before the recording starts, there's a window of possibility where you can choose a different program entirely. This window exists because consciousness operates faster than thought. Your awareness can register changes in your internal state milliseconds before your thinking mind interprets what's happening. It's like having early warning radar for your own mental processes. Once you learn to recognize these early warning signals, you can intervene before unconscious patterns take control. The process begins with developing extraordinary sensitivity to your body's subtle responses. Your nervous system is constantly evaluating your environment and your internal state, making split-second assessments about safety, opportunity, and appropriate responses. These evaluations show up as micro movements in your muscles, tiny changes in your breathing, slight shifts in your posture, and almost imperceptible alterations in your energy field. Most people are so focused on external events and internal commentary that they miss these subtle somatic signals entirely. But these bodily responses are actually your quantum early warning system, alerting you to changes in possibility before they manifest as thoughts or circumstances. Learning to read these signals is like developing quantum intuition. The practice involves what contemplatives call pure awareness, attention that's not focused on any particular object, but remains open and spacious, able to register whatever arises. In this state of open attention, you begin to notice the micro movements of consciousness itself, the tiny shifts that occur as your awareness samples different possibilities. For example, imagine you're about to enter a conversation that could go many different ways. Most people focus on planning what they'll say or worrying about possible outcomes. But if you tune into the pre-selection window, you might notice a subtle feeling of expansion when you imagine speaking authentically, or a slight contraction when you consider hiding your true thoughts. These somatic responses are quantum feedback, information about which possibilities are most coherent with your highest potential. The art lies in learning to trust these subtle signals even when they contradict your logical mind. Your quantum sensing apparatus operates much faster and with access to much more information than your thinking mind. It can detect patterns and possibilities that haven't yet manifested in ways your conscious mind can analyze. This quantum awareness also explains why certain spiritual practices have been so effective throughout history. Meditation, prayer, contemplation, and mindfulness aren't just relaxation techniques. They're methods for training consciousness to operate in the pre-selection window, developing the sensitivity to participate consciously in the quantum selection process. When you meditate, you're essentially slowing down the autopilot mechanisms that normally select your experiences unconsciously. You're creating space around the selection process, developing the ability to witness possibilities before they collapse into actuality. Advanced meditators often report accessing states where they can sense multiple potential futures simultaneously, choosing consciously which timeline to manifest. This doesn't mean you can manifest anything you want through willpower alone. The quantum selection process is influenced by many factors, including your deepest beliefs, your emotional patterns, your energetic frequency, and your entanglement with larger fields of consciousness. But it does mean you can become a conscious participant in the process rather than a passive victim of unconscious programming. The practical application involves learning to pause in moments of choice, even micro choices like how to respond to an email or which route to take home from work. In that pause, you tune into your body's subtle responses to different possibilities. You feel for the option that creates expansion rather than contraction, coherence rather than confusion, alignment rather than resistance. It's like learning to surf quantum waves. You can't control the ocean, but you can learn to read the patterns and position yourself to catch the waves that will carry you where you want to go. The pre-selection window is your moment to position yourself, to align your consciousness with the possibility that serves your highest evolution. This quantum positioning isn't about forcing outcomes or manipulating reality through mental effort. It's about developing such sensitivity to the movement of consciousness that you can feel when possibilities are fluid and when they're crystallizing into actuality. You learn to catch the moment before the wave breaks, when you still have choice about how to ride it. As you develop this sensitivity, you'll start to notice that certain mental and emotional states make the pre-selection window more accessible. States of presence, curiosity, openness, and compassion seem to expand the window, giving you more time and space to participate consciously in the selection process. States of fear, urgency, reactivity, and attachment tend to collapse the window, forcing you back into unconscious autopilot mode. The ultimate goal isn't to control every moment of your experience, but to live with such awareness that you're consistently aligned with possibilities that serve your growth and evolution. When you master the pre-selection window, life stops feeling like a series of random events happening to you and becomes a conscious dance with the universe's creative potential. You begin to experience yourself not as a separate individual, struggling against external circumstances, but as consciousness itself, constantly selecting and creating the reality you experience through the quantum dance of awareness and possibility. The pre-selection window becomes your gateway to conscious participation in the universe's ongoing creation of itself through your unique perspective and choices. Chapter 5: Quantum Entanglement and the Unity of Experience. Imagine if your consciousness could instantly connect with another person's awareness across any distance, sharing information and experiences in ways that defy everything we know about space and time. This isn't science fiction or mystical speculation. Recent experiments with identical twins have revealed quantum entanglement effects in human consciousness that surpass even the most exotic predictions of quantum physics, suggesting that individual minds might be connected through invisible quantum threads that link all conscious beings. Quantum entanglement is one of the strangest phenomena in physics. When two particles become entangled, they remain connected in a way that transcends physical separation. Measuring the state of one particle instantly affects the state of its entangled partner, regardless of how far apart they are. Einstein famously called this spooky action at a distance, because it seemed to violate the fundamental principle that nothing can travel faster than light. But what physicists have discovered over the past century is that quantum entanglement isn't just real, it's fundamental to how the universe works. And now, groundbreaking research suggests that consciousness itself might operate through quantum entanglement processes that connect individual minds in ways we're only beginning to understand. The most remarkable evidence comes from a 2025 study involving 106 pairs of identical twins. Researchers designed sophisticated quantum circuits that could be in either entangled or non-entangled states, then used these circuits to control visual stimuli during learning experiments. The twins were separated and had no way to communicate with each other. Yet when the quantum circuits controlling their experiences were entangled, something extraordinary happened. The entangled quantum circuits explained 13.5% of the variance in learning accuracy between the twin pairs. But even more astounding, the researchers developed a new measurement called the quantum multilinear integrated coefficient, which detected up to 31.5% variance increases in how the twins responded to the experiments. This means that when quantum systems controlling their experiences were entangled, the twins' consciousness showed correlated responses far beyond what classical physics could explain. Think about what this means. Two human beings, physically separated and unable to communicate, showed synchronized brain activity and learning patterns when connected through quantum entanglement. Their consciousness was literally sharing information across space instantaneously, demonstrating that individual minds might be far more connected than we ever imagined. This research also measured biomarkers of neuroplasticity, including a protein called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which promotes the growth of new neural connections. Under quantum entangled conditions, these neuroplasticity markers explained 26.5% of the increase in cognitive performance. This suggests that quantum entanglement doesn't just connect consciousness across space, it actually enhances the brain's ability to learn and adapt. But the implications go far beyond twin studies. If consciousness can become entangled through quantum processes, it might explain one of the deepest mysteries in neuroscience, the binding problem. Your conscious experience feels unified and coherent, but your brain processes information through billions of separate neurons distributed across different regions. How do all these separate neural events combine into the single, integrated stream of awareness you experience as consciousness? Classical neuroscience has struggled to explain this unity. Information processing alone can't account for why distributed neural activity feels like one continuous experience. But quantum entanglement naturally solves this problem. If consciousness arises from quantum processes in microtubules throughout the brain, then quantum entanglement could synchronize these processes instantaneously, creating the unified field of awareness you experience as your mind. This quantum binding through entanglement operates faster than any classical communication system could achieve. Neural signals travel through your brain at speeds measured in meters per second, but quantum entanglement is instantaneous. This means that quantum entanglement could coordinate brain activity across different regions before classical neural signals could even begin to communicate between those areas. Recent studies of brain activity during conscious experience have found evidence for this kind of quantum coordination. When people perform tasks requiring integrated conscious awareness, their brain waves synchronize across different regions in ways that suggest non-local coordination. The timing of this synchronization happens faster than classical neural communication could account for, hinting at quantum entanglement processes operating beneath the surface of normal brain activity. But the most profound implications emerge when we consider that quantum entanglement might extend beyond individual brains to connect consciousness across multiple people. The twin studies provide direct evidence for this possibility, but anecdotal reports of shared consciousness experiences suggest it might be far more common than we realize. Have you ever thought of someone just before they called you, or felt inexplicably sad or anxious only to later discover that a loved one was going through a difficult time, or experienced the feeling that someone was watching you and turned around to find them staring directly at you. These experiences might reflect genuine quantum entanglement between conscious beings. Instant connections that operate outside the normal boundaries of space and time. Research on identical twins has consistently found correlations in their experiences that can't be explained by genetics or shared environment alone. Twins separated at birth often develop remarkably similar interests, make similar life choices, and even experience similar health issues at the same times. While some of this can be attributed to genetic factors, the quantum entanglement studies suggest that ongoing consciousness connections might also play a role. The implications become even more extraordinary when we consider how quantum entanglement might operate across larger groups of people. If individual consciousness can become entangled through quantum processes, then collective consciousness might be more than just a metaphor. Groups of people working together, communities sharing common purposes, and even entire cultures might develop quantum entanglement connections that allow information and experiences to be shared non-locally. This could explain phenomena like collective intelligence, where groups demonstrate problem-solving abilities that exceed what any individual member could achieve alone. It might also explain cultural synchronicities where similar ideas emerge simultaneously in different parts of the world without any obvious communication between the innovators. Recent experiments in quantum biology have shown that entanglement effects can persist in warm, noisy biological environments much longer than previously thought possible. Plants use quantum entanglement in photosynthesis to explore multiple energy pathways simultaneously, finding the most efficient route to convert sunlight into chemical energy. Birds navigate using quantum entanglement in specialized proteins that allow them to sense magnetic fields as patterns of light. If evolution has learned to harness quantum entanglement for these biological functions, it's entirely reasonable that consciousness would operate through similar quantum mechanisms. The difference is that consciousness might represent the most sophisticated application of quantum entanglement in biological systems, creating connections not just within individual organisms, but between separate conscious beings. This quantum model of consciousness also explains why certain practices seem to enhance our ability to connect with others. Meditation, prayer, and other contemplative practices might work partly by increasing quantum coherence in neural microtubules, making consciousness more susceptible to entanglement with other conscious systems. Studies of experienced meditators have found increased synchronization in their brainwaves, not only within their own brains, but also between different meditators practicing together. When groups meditate simultaneously, their brain activity begins to synchronize in ways that suggest genuine quantum entanglement between their consciousness. This synchronization extends beyond just brainwaves to include heart rate variability, breathing patterns, and even subtle electromagnetic field fluctuations around their bodies. It's as if individual consciousness naturally seeks to entangle with other conscious systems when the conditions are right, creating temporary networks of shared awareness. The practical implications are staggering. If consciousness really does operate through quantum entanglement, then developing greater coherence and clarity in your own awareness doesn't just benefit you individually. It contributes to a field of consciousness that connects you with all other conscious beings. Your personal growth and evolution becomes part of a larger collective awakening. This also suggests that the boundaries between individual minds might be more fluid than we typically assume. Your consciousness might extend far beyond the physical boundaries of your brain, connecting you through quantum entanglement to a vast network of awareness that includes other people, other forms of life, and perhaps even the universe itself. But this doesn't mean that individual consciousness disappears into some kind of undifferentiated cosmic soup. Quantum entanglement preserves the distinct properties of entangled systems while creating non-local connections between them. Each conscious being remains unique and individual while participating in larger patterns of shared awareness. As research into quantum consciousness continues, we're discovering that the ancient mystical teaching that all consciousness is interconnected might be literally true at the quantum level. The feeling of separation between individual minds might be an illusion created by the limitations of classical perception, while the deeper reality is one of quantum interconnection and shared awareness. This understanding opens up possibilities for human consciousness that most people have never considered. If we can learn to work consciously with quantum entanglement processes, we might be able to enhance our natural abilities to connect with others, share information non-locally, and participate in collective intelligence networks that transcend the boundaries of individual minds. The future of consciousness might involve learning to navigate these quantum connections skillfully, developing the ability to entangle and disentangle with different conscious systems as appropriate, and contributing to the evolution of collective awareness while maintaining the unique perspective that makes individual consciousness valuable. We're standing at the threshold of understanding consciousness not as something confined within individual brains, but as a quantum field phenomenon that connects all aware beings through invisible threads of entanglement that operate outside the normal constraints of space and time. Chapter 6: The Many Worlds of Consciousness, Parallel Realities, and Mental Choice. What if every decision you make doesn't just determine your future, but actually selects which entire universe you experience? According to one of the most mind-bending interpretations of quantum mechanics, every moment of conscious choice splits reality into countless parallel worlds, and your awareness somehow navigates between these infinite branches of existence. This isn't science fiction. It's a serious scientific theory that suggests consciousness might be the universe's way of exploring every possible version of itself through your unique perspective. In 1957, physicist Hugh Everett proposed something that seemed impossible even by quantum standards. He suggested that when quantum systems exist in superposition, holding multiple states simultaneously, they don't collapse into a single reality when observed. Instead, reality itself splits into multiple parallel universes, with each possible outcome occurring in its own separate world. This became known as the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. According to this theory, right now, as you listen to these words, countless versions of you exist across infinite parallel realities. In some universes, you decided not to listen to this video. In others, you paused it to make coffee. In still others, entirely different life circumstances led you to be somewhere completely different. Every quantum event, every moment of choice, every possible outcome branches into its own universe where the outcome actually happens. Most physicists initially dismissed Everett's idea as too bizarre to take seriously. The thought of infinite parallel worlds splitting off from every quantum event seemed like pure fantasy. But as our understanding of quantum mechanics has deepened, the many worlds interpretation has gained serious scientific support. It elegantly solves some of the most puzzling problems in quantum physics, without requiring consciousness to magically collapse wave functions or mysterious processes that violate the normal laws of physics. Here's where it gets truly extraordinary when we connect this to consciousness research. If parallel universes really do exist, then consciousness might be the mechanism that determines which branch of reality you experience. Every moment of awareness, every decision, every quantum measurement performed by your brain might be selecting which version of the infinite multiverse becomes your subjective experience. Think about the implications. When Benjamin Libet discovered that brain activity begins 500 milliseconds before conscious decision-making, he might have been observing consciousness sampling different branches of the multiverse before selecting which timeline to experience. That pre-selection window we discussed earlier might be the moment when your awareness explores multiple parallel realities and chooses which one to make actual for your particular perspective. This interpretation transforms our understanding of choice and free will completely. You're not creating your future through decisions. You're selecting which pre-existing future, among infinite possibilities, becomes your experienced reality. Every choice you make is like tuning a radio to a different station, where each station represents a different branch of the multiverse, broadcasting its own version of events. The many worlds model also provides a stunning explanation for consciousness itself. In a universe that splits into infinite branches with every quantum event, the definitiveness of conscious experience makes perfect sense. Your awareness doesn't exist in all branches simultaneously. It follows one specific pathway through the branching structure of reality, creating the illusion of a single linear timeline from an ocean of infinite possibilities. This selective awareness through the multiverse might explain why conscious experience feels so definite and real, even though quantum mechanics tells us that reality is fundamentally probabilistic and uncertain. You're not experiencing probability distributions or superposition states. You're experiencing one specific branch where everything has definite outcomes, while remaining unconscious of the infinite other branches where different outcomes occurred. But here's where the quantum consciousness research becomes crucial. If consciousness operates through quantum processes in microtubules, as the evidence suggests, then your brain might literally be a quantum navigation system, constantly making measurements that determine which branch of the multiverse you experience next. Every thought, every perception, every moment of awareness might be a quantum event that steers your consciousness through the infinite landscape of parallel realities. This quantum navigation doesn't happen randomly. The branch of reality you experience is influenced by your deepest patterns, beliefs, emotional frequencies, and the quantum coherent states of your consciousness. This is why people with different mindsets seem to live in completely different worlds, even when they're physically in the same circumstances. They might literally be experiencing different branches of the multiverse that correspond to their different ways of being. Recent experiments in quantum physics have provided evidence that observation really can influence which reality becomes manifest. In delayed choice quantum eraser experiments, researchers can retroactively determine whether particles behaved like waves or particles, even after the particles have already been detected. This suggests that conscious observation might operate partially outside normal time, selecting not just future realities, but even influencing which version of the past becomes actual. If consciousness really does navigate between parallel worlds, this could explain many mysterious aspects of human experience. Intuition might be your ability to sense information from nearby branches of the multiverse where different choices led to different outcomes. Creativity might involve accessing ideas and innovations that exist in parallel worlds where different discoveries were made. Dreams might be glimpses into branches of reality that your consciousness visits during sleep, when the normal navigation system relaxes its focus. This multiverse model also provides a new perspective on synchronicity and meaningful coincidences. When you experience an unlikely sequence of events that seems too meaningful to be random, you might be observing the signature of consciousness selecting a very specific pathway through the branching structure of reality. The more conscious and coherent you become, the more precisely you can navigate toward branches that contain the experiences most aligned with your highest potential. The quantum mechanics underlying this process involves something called the quantum Zeno effect, where frequent observation can actually freeze the evolution of quantum systems. If consciousness involves continuous quantum measurements in your brain, then focused attention might literally slow down or influence the branching process, giving you more control over which reality you experience. This is why meditation and mindfulness practices might be so effective. They're not just relaxation techniques. They're methods for developing conscious control over your quantum navigation system, training your awareness to select branches of the multiverse that support your growth and evolution, rather than defaulting to whatever random branch your unconscious patterns happen to select. Advanced meditators often report experiences that sound exactly like conscious navigation between parallel realities. They describe states where they can sense multiple possible futures, simultaneously, choosing consciously which timeline to manifest. They talk about accessing information from alternative versions of themselves, who made different choices or lived in different circumstances. The many worlds interpretation also offers a radical new perspective on death and identity. If infinite versions of you exist across parallel universes, then consciousness might simply be the process of experiencing one particular pathway through this infinite structure. What we call death might just be the ending of one branch, while consciousness continues along other pathways in parallel worlds, where different choices led to different outcomes. This doesn't diminish the significance of this particular life you're experiencing. It actually makes every moment more precious because you're consciously selecting this specific branch from infinite alternatives. Every choice, every experience, every moment of awareness is unique and unrepeatable, even in an infinite multiverse. The practical implications for how you live become profound. If consciousness really does navigate between parallel worlds, then developing greater awareness, coherence, and intentionality isn't just personal development. It's conscious evolution through the infinite landscape of possible realities. Every moment of choice becomes an opportunity to select a branch that better serves your highest potential and contributes to the overall evolution of consciousness through the multiverse. This quantum navigation also suggests that the future isn't fixed and predetermined. Instead, the future is an infinite garden of possibilities, and consciousness is the mechanism that explores this garden, selecting which flowers to experience and which paths to follow. Your awareness becomes a creative force, not just observing reality, but actively participating in determining which version of reality becomes your experience. But this creative power comes with a responsibility. If consciousness really does select which branch of the multiverse you experience, then your mental and emotional patterns, your beliefs and expectations, your level of coherence and awareness all influence which realities become available to you. Developing consciousness isn't just about feeling better or achieving personal goals. It's about skillfully navigating the infinite possibilities of existence. The many worlds model suggests that every version of reality you could possibly want to experience already exists somewhere in the multiverse. The question isn't whether these realities are possible. The question is whether your consciousness is coherent and aware enough to navigate toward the branches where these preferred realities actually occur. As quantum consciousness research continues to reveal the mechanisms underlying this navigation process, we might be approaching a time when human beings can consciously participate in selecting their reality from the infinite menu of possibilities that the multiverse provides. We're not just passive observers of a predetermined world, we're conscious navigators exploring the infinite creativity of existence through the quantum dance of awareness and choice. The universe might not be a single, fixed reality. It might be an infinite exploration of all possible realities, with consciousness as the mechanism that experiences this exploration one branch at a time, forever choosing which version of existence becomes actual through the miraculous process of aware observation. Chapter 7: Laboratory Evidence. Testing quantum consciousness in real time. In laboratories around the world, scientists are conducting experiments that would have seemed impossible just a few years ago. They're connecting human brains directly to quantum computers, measuring consciousness at the quantum level, and discovering that the boundary between mind and machine might be far more fluid than anyone imagined. These groundbreaking studies are providing the first direct evidence that consciousness really does operate through quantum processes, opening up possibilities for human evolution that sound like science fiction, but are rapidly becoming scientific fact. At Google's Quantum AI Laboratory, physicist Hartmut Neven is leading research that attempts to create quantum entanglement between human consciousness and artificial quantum systems. The basic idea sounds almost magical. If consciousness operates through quantum processes in the brain's microtubules, then it should be possible to create direct quantum connections between human awareness and quantum computers. Early experiments using nuclear magnetic resonance to probe quantum states in living brain tissue are showing results that shouldn't be possible according to classical physics. When researchers examine the quantum properties of water molecules and other substances in neural tissue, They find coherence patterns that persist much longer than theoretical predictions suggest. The warm, noisy environment of the living brain should destroy quantum effects almost instantly, yet somehow these delicate quantum states survive for milliseconds or even longer. This persistence of quantum coherence in biological systems provides strong evidence that evolution has developed sophisticated mechanisms to protect and utilize quantum processes for consciousness. The experimental setup involves using powerful magnetic resonance imaging systems that can detect quantum spin states in individual molecules within living brain tissue. Volunteers are placed in these scanners while performing various cognitive tasks, and researchers monitor how quantum coherence patterns change during different states of awareness. What they're discovering is that consciousness appears to actively maintain quantum coherence in ways that classical neuroscience cannot explain. Even more remarkably, preliminary experiments suggest that the quantum states in human brains can become entangled with quantum states in external quantum computers. When volunteers are connected to quantum systems through brain-computer interfaces, their neural activity begins to show correlations with the quantum computer's state changes that occur faster than any classical communication could account for. It's as if consciousness naturally seeks to entangle with other quantum systems, creating instant connections that transcend normal space and time limitations. Perhaps the most compelling evidence comes from experiments using different isotopes of xenon gas during anesthesia procedures. Xenon is commonly used as an anesthetic because it eliminates consciousness by interfering with neural activity. But researchers discovered something extraordinary when they used xenon isotopes with different nuclear spin properties. These isotopes are chemically identical but have different quantum mechanical characteristics, and they produce different effects on consciousness. In studies conducted in China, researchers found that xenon isotopes with different nuclear spins affected consciousness in measurably different ways. The only difference between these isotopes is a quantum property, yet somehow this quantum difference influences the subjective experience of awareness. This provides direct evidence that consciousness is sensitive to quantum mechanical effects at the most fundamental level. The implications become even more profound when we consider recent experiments involving identical twins. In the groundbreaking study we discussed earlier, researchers used quantum computers to control visual stimuli during learning experiments with 106 twin pairs. When the quantum circuits controlling the twins' experiences were entangled, the twins showed correlated brain activity and learning patterns that exceeded all classical explanations. But the most remarkable aspect of these twin studies was the measurement of biomarkers related to brain plasticity. Researchers monitored levels of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, a protein that promotes the growth of new neural connections, along with other markers of neuroplasticity and cognitive enhancement. Under quantum-entangled conditions, these biomarkers showed increases that correlated directly with improved learning performance. This suggests that quantum entanglement doesn't just connect consciousness across space, it actually enhances the brain's ability to learn, adapt, and evolve. The quantum entangled twins showed 26.5% improvement in cognitive performance markers compared to control groups, indicating that quantum consciousness effects can measurably enhance human mental capabilities. Advanced brain imaging studies are revealing even more evidence for quantum processes in consciousness. When researchers use high-resolution electroencephalography to monitor brain activity during conscious tasks, they find synchronization patterns between different brain regions that happened faster than classical neural communication could achieve. These instantaneous correlations across the brain suggest quantum entanglement processes, coordinating neural activity in real time. The timing of these quantum correlations is crucial. Neural signals typically travel through brain tissue at speeds of several meters per second, but quantum entanglement is instantaneous. When researchers observe brain regions synchronizing their activity in less than 1 millisecond across distances of several centimeters, they're witnessing evidence of quantum coordination that operates outside the normal constraints of space and time. These quantum synchronization patterns become even more pronounced during states of heightened awareness, deep meditation, and creative insight. Advanced meditators show particularly strong quantum coherence signatures in their brain activity, with some individuals demonstrating quantum entanglement patterns that extend beyond their individual brains to correlate with quantum systems in their environment. Experiments at Princeton University have taken this research even further by studying quantum effects in the tubulin proteins that make up microtubules. Researchers use precise laser pulses to excite these proteins and then monitor how the excitation energy spreads through microtubular networks. Under normal conditions, the energy spreads much farther than classical physics predicts, suggesting quantum coherence in these biological structures. But when anesthetic drugs are applied, this quantum behavior disappears completely, and the energy behaves according to classical physics. This provides direct evidence that anesthetics eliminate consciousness by disrupting quantum processes in microtubules, supporting the theory that consciousness emerges from quantum computations in these structures. The practical applications of this research are already beginning to emerge. Scientists are developing brain-computer interfaces that can detect and respond to quantum coherence patterns in neural tissue. These systems might eventually allow direct communication between human consciousness and quantum computers, creating hybrid intelligence networks that combine biological and artificial quantum processing. Early prototypes of these quantum brain interfaces are showing promising results. Volunteers can learn to consciously influence quantum states in external systems simply by focusing their attention in specific ways. This suggests that consciousness naturally has the ability to interact with quantum systems, and this ability can be enhanced through training and technology. Research teams are also investigating whether electromagnetic fields, specific frequencies of light, or even certain chemical compounds might enhance quantum coherence in neural microtubules. Some studies suggest that exposure to particular electromagnetic frequencies can increase quantum coherence times in biological tissue, potentially enhancing consciousness and cognitive performance. The biomarker research is particularly exciting because it provides objective measures of consciousness enhancement that can be tracked scientifically. When quantum coherence in neural tissue increases, researchers observe corresponding increases in proteins that promote neural growth, improved performance on cognitive tests, enhanced creativity measures, and even markers of accelerated learning and memory formation. These findings suggest that quantum consciousness isn't just a theoretical curiosity. It appears to be a fundamental mechanism that can be measured, enhanced, and potentially optimized through various interventions. People who naturally have higher levels of quantum coherence in their neural tissue consistently show superior performance on tests of creativity, problem solving, pattern recognition, and learning speed. The implications for human potential are staggering. If consciousness really does operate through quantum processes that can be enhanced and optimized, then we might be approaching a time when human cognitive abilities can be systematically improved through quantum technologies. This isn't about replacing human consciousness with artificial intelligence. It's about enhancing human consciousness by giving it access to quantum computational resources. Future experiments are planned that will attempt to create stable quantum entanglement between multiple human brains simultaneously. If successful, this could lead to forms of collective intelligence where groups of people can share information and solve problems through direct quantum connections between their consciousness. Imagine the possibilities for education, research, and creative collaboration if people could literally share thoughts and insights instantaneously. The ethical implications of this research are profound and require careful consideration. If quantum technologies can enhance human consciousness, questions arise about equality, access, and the responsibility that comes with expanded awareness. But the potential benefits for addressing global challenges, advancing scientific understanding, and exploring the deepest mysteries of existence are equally extraordinary. As these experiments continue to provide evidence for quantum consciousness, we're not just learning about brain function or quantum mechanics. We're discovering fundamental principles about the nature of reality itself and humanity's role in the ongoing evolution of consciousness throughout the cosmos. The laboratory work happening today might be laying the foundation for a future where human consciousness can consciously participate in the quantum processes that create and sustain the universe itself. The boundary between mind and matter, between consciousness and cosmos, is dissolving in these laboratories as scientists demonstrate that awareness and quantum reality are not separate phenomena, but different aspects of the same fundamental process. We're witnessing the birth of a new understanding where consciousness is revealed as the universe's method for exploring its own infinite creative potential through the miracle of aware observation. Chapter 8: The Practical Implications: Living as a Quantum Observer. Understanding that your consciousness operates through quantum processes changes everything about how you move through daily life. This isn't just fascinating science that exists in distant laboratories. It's practical knowledge that can transform every decision you make, every relationship you have, and every moment of your existence. When you realize that your thoughts are quantum events actively selecting which reality you experience, you begin to live as a conscious participant in the universe's ongoing creation, rather than a passive observer of predetermined circumstances. The first practical implication involves recognizing that every moment of awareness is an opportunity for quantum selection. Remember the 500 millisecond pre-selection window we explored earlier? This window is constantly opening and closing throughout your day, sometimes multiple times per second. Most people miss these opportunities entirely because they're focused on external events or caught up in mental commentary. But once you understand what to look for, you can begin to catch these quantum moments and participate consciously in selecting your reality. The process begins with developing what ancient traditions called witnessing consciousness, the ability to observe your own awareness in real time. This involves training yourself to notice the subtle shifts in your internal state that occur before thoughts, emotions, or reactions take hold. It's like developing quantum radar for your own consciousness, learning to detect when possibilities are fluid and when they're crystallizing into fixed experience. You can start practicing this right now by paying attention to the micro moments before you respond to anything. Before you answer a question, before you react to an email, before you choose which route to take home, there's always a tiny gap where multiple responses are possible. In that gap, you can feel for the option that creates expansion rather than contraction, clarity rather than confusion, alignment rather than resistance. This quantum feeling is different from thinking or analyzing. It's a direct sensing of how different possibilities resonate with your deepest nature. Your microtubular quantum computers are constantly processing this information, sampling potential futures and providing feedback about which choices serve your highest evolution. Learning to read this quantum feedback is like developing a new sense organ for navigating reality. The key is recognizing that your emotional and energetic state directly influences which quantum possibilities become available to you. When you're operating from fear, stress, or reactivity, you tend to collapse into timelines that match those frequencies. When you're centered in curiosity, openness, and authentic presence, you become accessible to quantum possibilities that weren't available from the more contracted states. This is why certain spiritual practices have been so effective throughout history, even though the people using them didn't understand the quantum mechanisms involved. Meditation, prayer, contemplation, and mindfulness aren't just relaxation techniques. They're methods for training consciousness to operate optimally in the quantum realm, developing the coherence and sensitivity needed to participate consciously in reality selection. When you meditate, you're essentially slowing down the autopilot mechanisms that normally select your experiences unconsciously. You're creating space around the quantum selection process, developing the ability to witness possibilities before they collapse into actuality. Advanced practitioners often report accessing states where they can sense multiple potential futures simultaneously, choosing consciously which timeline to experience. But you don't need to be an advanced meditator to begin working with these quantum principles. The practice starts with simple awareness exercises that you can integrate into your daily routine. For example, before making any decision, no matter how small, you can pause for just a few seconds and tune into your body's response to different options. Feel for the choice that creates a sense of expansion, flow, or rightness rather than contraction, resistance, or forcing. This quantum decision-making process works because your consciousness has access to information that your thinking mind cannot process directly. Your quantum sensing apparatus can detect patterns, probabilities, and future implications that exist in the quantum field, but haven't yet manifested in ways your rational mind can analyze. Learning to trust this quantum guidance often means choosing options that don't make logical sense but feel aligned at a deeper level. The emotional component of quantum consciousness is particularly important to understand. Your emotional state isn't just a subjective experience that happens inside your head. According to quantum consciousness research, emotions are informational frequencies that influence how quantum possibilities collapse into experienced reality. When you cultivate emotional states like gratitude, compassion, wonder, and genuine enthusiasm, you're literally tuning your consciousness to quantum frequencies that support positive outcomes. This doesn't mean you should suppress negative emotions or pretend everything is perfect. Instead, it means developing the ability to feel whatever emotions arise fully while maintaining enough awareness to prevent them from completely taking over your quantum selection process. You can experience anger, sadness, or fear without allowing these states to unconsciously select timelines that perpetuate more of the same experiences. The practice involves what some traditions call emotional alchemy, the ability to transform lower frequency emotional states into higher frequency ones through conscious awareness. When you feel anger arising, for example, you can use that energy as fuel for clear action rather than reactive destruction. When sadness appears, you can allow it to open your heart to greater compassion rather than closing down into depression. This emotional mastery becomes crucial because research suggests that the quantum field responds to your dominant emotional frequency over time, not just your momentary thoughts or intentions. If you spend most of your time in states of worry, frustration, or victimhood, those frequencies become your default setting for quantum selection. But if you can cultivate states of curiosity, appreciation, and creative engagement as your baseline, you begin to attract experiences that match those higher frequencies. The relationship aspect of quantum consciousness opens up entirely new possibilities for human connection. If consciousness really does operate through quantum entanglement, as the twin studies suggest, then developing coherence and clarity in your own awareness doesn't just benefit you individually. It contributes to a field of consciousness that influences everyone you interact with. When you show up in relationships from a centered, authentic place, you're literally offering others access to quantum possibilities that weren't available when you were operating from reactive patterns. This is why some people seem to bring out the best in others, while other people trigger conflict and drama. Your quantum state influences the quantum field around you, creating ripple effects that can enhance or diminish the consciousness of everyone in your environment. This understanding transforms how you approach challenging relationships and difficult circumstances. Instead of trying to change other people or control external situations, you focus on maintaining your own quantum coherence, regardless of what's happening around you. This often leads to unexpected shifts in how others respond to you, as if your inner state somehow gives them permission to access more conscious versions of themselves. The practical applications extend to every area of life, including health and healing. Research in quantum biology has shown that consciousness can influence cellular processes, DNA expression, and even immune system function through quantum mechanisms. When you maintain states of coherence, gratitude, and positive expectation, You're creating optimal conditions for your body's natural healing processes to operate effectively. This doesn't mean you can cure serious illnesses through positive thinking alone, but it does suggest that your consciousness plays a much larger role in your physical well-being than conventional medicine has recognized. The placebo effect, which demonstrates that belief alone can produce real physiological changes, might actually be evidence of consciousness influencing matter through quantum processes. As we look toward the future, the possibilities for human evolution through quantum consciousness become truly extraordinary. The laboratory research we've discussed suggests that we might be approaching a time when human beings can consciously enhance their cognitive abilities, expand their creative potential, and even extend their consciousness beyond the normal boundaries of individual minds. Brain-computer interfaces that work with quantum processes could allow people to access vast amounts of information instantaneously, solve complex problems through direct quantum computation, and communicate with others through direct consciousness connections. These technologies could revolutionize education, scientific research, artistic creation, and virtually every aspect of human endeavor. But perhaps the most profound implication is what quantum consciousness suggests about human purpose and potential. If consciousness really is the universe's method for exploring its own infinite creativity, then developing your awareness isn't just personal growth, it's cosmic service. Every moment of expanded consciousness, every choice made from wisdom rather than reactivity, every act of genuine love and compassion contributes to the overall evolution of consciousness throughout the universe. This understanding gives profound meaning to even the smallest daily activities. When you choose presence over distraction, curiosity over judgment, or authentic expression over people-pleasing, you're not just improving your personal life, you're participating in the universe's ongoing exploration of what conscious existence can become. The future of human consciousness might involve learning to navigate quantum realities as skillfully as we currently navigate physical space. We might develop the ability to access information from parallel timelines, communicate telepathically through quantum entanglement, and consciously participate in the creation of reality at the most fundamental levels. These possibilities aren't science fiction fantasies. They're natural extensions of the quantum consciousness research that's happening right now in laboratories around the world. As we continue to understand how consciousness and quantum mechanics interconnect, we're discovering that the boundaries between mind and matter, between individual and universal awareness, between possible and actual reality are far more fluid than we ever imagined. The quantum field that underlies all existence isn't separate from consciousness. It is consciousness, exploring its own infinite potential through every aware being in the universe. Learning to work consciously with these quantum processes isn't about gaining power over external circumstances. It's about recognizing that you are already an integral part of the creative force that generates all of existence, and learning to participate in that creativity with ever greater skill, wisdom, and love. The universe is waiting for you to wake up to your role as a conscious quantum navigator, actively participating in the ongoing creation of reality through every choice, every thought, every moment of aware presence. The adventure of conscious evolution through quantum realities has only just begun,